A Nandroid's Dream. Chapter 9. Dead systems rebooted. Battery at 15% and charging. No major errors. Seek Sterling certified technician as soon as possible. All of Rosie's core systems were back up and running now that she'd gotten some power, and each one performed a small self-check, confirming that she was in nominal condition to fully boot. Her memory was online first. The last horrible moments replayed perfectly clear. Then her emotions returned, and the same sinking pit drug her down, tearing away the sweet calm that being turned off had brought. As the connections to the rest of her body finalized, she slowly opened her eyes. But there was no Sterling technician. She wasn't in a lab room or a jail cell. There weren't any bright lights or straitjackets. She was just plugged in her room, sitting on her charging chair, and to her side, slumped in a recliner they had brought in from the living room, was her owner. They looked horrible. She had no idea how much time had passed, but it was obvious they hadn't slept, except for now. Their hair was a mess, their eyes were heavily bagged, and they were crumpled into the chair, deeply asleep and wearing the same clothes they had on when they left, completely disheveled. Her lip quivered at the sad sight she had reduced them to. She was again in high draw mode, all her raw emotions back, ravaging her weary battery. She wasn't sure what to do, or if she should do anything. This was all her fault, after all. Why had it come to this? How could she make things better? There wasn't any way for both parties involved to be happy. Her owners shuffled in their seat, their head bobbing awake as they forced an eye open. At the sight of Rosie awake, they forced their eyes fully open and pushed themselves up, making her feel even worse. She couldn't even look at them. Maybe she should have pretended to still be turned off and let them sleep. They sorely needed it. The pair sat in a terse silence. She didn't want to risk messing things up further. Better to just wait for whatever inevitability her owner had in store for her. They rubbed their head and sat up straighter in their chair, facing Rosie head on, before finally breaking the silence. "Are you all right?" Their voice was raspy and groggy, matching in tone how they looked in person. This strange situation made a direct answer difficult. She wasn't sure where to start or what to say. She definitely wasn't all right, and they knew it. So what were they expecting? But her owner pressed again, giving a clear direction. "You were laying unconscious on the floor. Are you all right?" "Yes, I just ran out of power," she replied softly. Reading their tired expression from the corner of her eyes was hard. She couldn't even tell if they were understanding everything she said. "What happened?" "Nothing. I just didn't notice my low charge." "Why?" They trailed off, rubbing their face with both hands, letting out a long sigh. They hung their head, slowly massaging their temples. Rosie didn't know what to say to make things better, realizing there probably wasn't anything. It wasn't about trying to mend what she had done. Her only option was to try and keep herself in the only place that mattered, so she broke the silence this time. "Please don't send me away." Her voice was meek and small, barely a whisper. Her owner pulled themselves up and looked at the frightened robot. "I'm not going to send you away." They gave a strong reply with a more composed look that made her electric heart quake and relax ever so slightly. Her biggest fear was assuaged, but this just led to her other fears growing to take up the space. She stayed silent as her owner closed their eyes and sank back into their seat, reciting a small speech they had set to memory, no doubt recited 100 times in the hours they had been away. "You didn't do anything wrong, you just surprised me. I wasn't sure how to react, so I kind of panicked. I apologize for pushing you." Even now, they were still so understanding. It hurt her, seeing them try to be so kind and polite to her, knowing she was just a silly robot, just an appliance that said things and acted in ways they didn't want. They continued, speaking cautiously and with their eyes closed. "I understand how you feel. You're very special to me too. Just..." They trailed off again, but they didn't need to finish the sentence. She already knew where it was going. Of course they'd never reciprocate her feelings. How stupid of her to ever think otherwise. Now she had to be lectured to like a child. That small voice she had buried returned, and it nagged at her to dig deeper, to ask questions, to figure out what was wrong with her. What don't you like about me? What don't you like about me? It was an automatic response, with a voice so strange she couldn't even be sure it was hers. But she didn't try to stop herself as the words flowed. Now stop. I don't dislike anything about you. An unhelpful answer. They were very stern, and she fell back to her old sterling training. Be quiet and wait for the human to speak. They continued with a softer tone. It's just not okay for humans and robots to act like that. What nonsense. What about all the things they had gone and done with you? Was all that okay? She wasn't going to ruin things further with questioning something she obviously didn't understand. Her owner continued as she stifled the horrible little voice, which had decided now was the time to return. There's nothing wrong with you or the way you're feeling. I think it might just be misplaced. I don't want things to change between us right now, and I'm fine with you staying here. Are you fine with that? They finished their speech and forcefully reopened their eyes, met with Rosie still frozen in her chair. Yes, she said, keeping her eyes focused on nothing in particular directly ahead of her. I don't want you to be here under false pretenses. We're going to have to set some kind of boundaries and be honest with each other. She started to panic. Whatever this meant, it couldn't be good. Maybe they were going to lock her in her room at night because of her strange behavior from before, the cause of which would now be fully apparent to them. But they left this horrible thought to fester and turned their attention to her well-being instead. Running out of battery didn't cause any problems, did it? No, I'm fine. Their eyes narrowed. It was obvious that they'd be a bit distrusting of her after everything that had happened. No, I promise. There's nothing out of the ordinary. For me, she added hastily. Just the normal massive power draw and warnings clogging her system, but nothing new beyond what she'd already learned to deal with. I think I get it. Her owner nodded slowly. Do you know how long you were out for? She didn't even know what day it was, let alone the time, but the two of them pieced together their timelines. She divulged her worrisome pacing and attempts to call their job, putting her power out well within the afternoon of the following day. Her owner was able to deduce she was out for at least 8 hours before they had arrived back home in the late evening and found her. Well, that would explain the phone. I did try to call once, but it was busy. I started getting nervous. I just kind of drove around a bunch. Had a lot to think about. Went to Makina twice. Finally called into work. They let me know someone was looking for me, and I knew it had to be you, so I tried calling here. I don't know, when I came home I got scared seeing the door open and you knocked out and the phone drug out across the kitchen. I didn't know what to think. She still wasn't sure how they were expecting her to respond. She felt bad enough already, but knew any apology would just be met with more criticism, so she stayed silent, bottling up her guilt. Her owner was lost in their own thoughts again, and only after a jaw-cracking yawn did they snap out of it. I've got to get some sleep. If you really are fine, you should get fully charged and just take things easy. You don't have to worry about anything from me for a few days. Sound good? She nodded. Please, I mean it this time. You can relax and we'll get things figured out better later. I'm not going to get rid of you and you aren't in the wrong, okay? She kept her gaze averted and gave another nod. They quietly sat together for a few more moments before her owner wordlessly got up and left, going down the hall to pass out in their bed. Rosie had so much to think about, there was no way she could initiate a recharge now. What was she going to do? How was she going to stay here and be near her owner, knowing full well that they didn't care for her? The thought made something deep inside ache. She didn't know what it was. All she knew was that it was something that could never be fixed. No sterling technician could put her back in good working order. Nothing could make this feeling go away. Why did this have to happen to her? She had tried to be a good robot. Her owner was just so kind and caring to her, but why did she expect more from them? She couldn't stay here, but at the same time she couldn't just leave. She had nowhere to go and no money to get there, and she would never ask for any from her owner. She thought about Rip. He may take in a homeless robot. After all, he had played a part in all of this. She thought about reaching out to the Department of Automation. She knew there were some programs there but had no idea what to expect. She even thought about Sterling. Surely she could go in, and they could do something to reset her and put her with a new family, people she wouldn't have a problem with. But she didn't want any of that to happen, and the mere thought of these scenarios put her into a frenzy. She just wanted to stay here, with them. but they didn't want her here the same way she wanted to be here. It was all too much, and her battery was running low again, outpacing the power she was getting. She could either recharge now or wait until she hit 0% again. She chose to lean back into her chair and slide into recharge mode, all these thoughts still weighing heavy on her mind. Her dreams were horrible and chaotic. One, she was in a completely barren and destroyed house, all semblance of normalcy stripped from the walls as paint peeled and holes leading into darkness covered the floor. Another, she saw her owner's car smashed and in shambles on the road with them nowhere to be found, and it was all her fault. The next, she was at Sterling Tower, going into the back with a bot dock, and felt the shame of hundreds of other perfectly functioning Nandroids watching her go. It stretched on, nothing but bad experiences, and always her alone, the antagonist in a sea of judgment. Mercy finally found her as her battery reached its peak charge, and she awoke. The house was still quiet, but it was afternoon now. She sat up in her chair, still weighed down by all the harsh thoughts and emotions that tugged at her helpless heart. What was the point even in getting up? Maybe she could just stay here forever and be forgotten, in an endless cycle of charging and passing into blissful sleep once her battery hit 0. Her owner said not to worry for the next few days at least, and she had no drive, nothing to tempt her to do anything anyway. So she stayed in her room, seated in her chair. Everything that had happened was so fresh in her mind, there was no escape. She couldn't cry to make herself feel better. She couldn't take charge of the situation. She could only wallow in this sad affair, wondering what she could have done differently to have been a better robot. And there really was only one thing, and that would have been to have gone to a different owner. The thought stung, but it was really the only thing that could have remedied this situation. Her owner was too kind and caring to behave any differently, and it would only have been a matter of time before she changed again and grew attached to their wonderful personality. Really, the only safe bet would have been to never have met them. Deep parts within her ached and burned with this thought, but she could do nothing to alleviate it. If they don't care about you, why keep you around? She was an expensive product? Her owner didn't want her to divulge confidential business information she might know? Did the answer even matter? They tell you one thing, but their actions say something different. It was weird how they had behaved in regards to her so far. But that was just because she didn't understand human nuances. She was just a silly robot after all. There was a reason the human was supposed to be the head of the household. As she tackled with new questions and concerns the little voice raised, she heard her owner's alarm go off some hours later as evening was beginning to fall. A faint shuffle grew louder as they got out of bed and left their room, pausing briefly at her door before continuing down the hall, the noise fading with them. Something's not right with all this. The only thing not right here is you. She didn't even have the strength to silence the voice and was stuck listening to it a while longer. It brought up all the things Rosie's owner had done for her, all the things they'd seen, places they'd been. How was any of that supposed to be viewed as anything other than affectionate? But instead of making her feel better, each reminder of happier times kept her unhappy and tied her down even tighter. She might be like this forever. She was so wrapped up in her own thoughts she almost missed the soft knock on her door. She didn't acknowledge it. Maybe it really was best to just stay here. Things were horrible, yes, but they could get worse out there. She could just keep the status quo for as long as possible if she stayed in her room. Her owner left after a moment, back down the hall, leaving her all alone again. She couldn't even bring herself to answer her owner now. Truly, what good was she? What purpose did she serve being here, in this house? Everything that had been so good for her just a day ago was now a horrible reminder of her place in the world. How could things change so rapidly? Being absorbed in her own thoughts, she missed her owner's return, evidently not content to leave her alone. She was brought around by the louder knock that accompanied them this time. "Rosie, are you awake?" her owner asked as they opened the door a tad. She thought about pretending to be asleep, but her owner had now seen her awake, so it was too late for that. They looked grim, finding Rosie sitting in the exact same position they had left her in hours ago. "Hey, I don't want to bother you, but would you like to come out and join me? Eating by myself is a bit lonely." She didn't have any inclination to join them, but she did as any good robot would do and followed the human order. Without a word, she unplugged from her chair and got up, following them into the kitchen. Her owner had made themselves some instant rice and reheated some other takeout leftovers. A sad dinner, perfect for the feeling of the day in the darkening kitchen. They had arranged the table some, putting Rosie's origami closer to their sitting place and pulling a chair out next to them for her to take, which she did. The only noises were the soft clink of her owner's silverware on their plate, broken up by the occasional chewing. It was a tense meal, but not any worse than being in her room. "Your origami really is pretty. It's impressive what you were able to make." Her owner paused, waiting for Rosie's response as they twirled a colored tulip between their fingers, but the compliment fell on deaf ears. They set it down and went back to toying with their food, lost in thought, probably trying to think up another compliment, no doubt. She'd never noticed just how quiet the house could really be. Before her owner could offer up more sweet nothings, the phone rang, giving them both a respite from the silence. Her owner hurried over and answered the call. "Hello? Hey, I'm doing fine." Someone they knew. Someone they were friendly with. They weren't exactly whispering, but they were talking in a hushed tone. It's a bit of a long story, but nothing serious. I just need a few days off." I know, sorry for the scare. It wasn't anything serious, just a bit of a mix-up. It must be someone from work. Most likely that secretary. That horrible secretary. Rosie felt that little spark return, her dislike for that human being the only thing that seemed capable of bringing her out of her lull. "Yeah. It's not something I really want to get into, but I've got it under control now." "Yeah, well that's why they call them personal days, since it's personal." "I appreciate that, but I have it handled. The last thing I need is more people worrying about me." "Yeah. Really, it's okay. I'll give you a call in a few days then, alright?" "No, I know. Just push everyone back a day." "Thanks, you too." She didn't know what to make of the conversation. Did they really not care that much? This was all just an inconvenience to them? They could speak so nonchalantly even after all this had happened. She continued staring mindlessly at the table as her owner returned to their barely touched meal. They took another small bite and continued playing with the rest, chewing slowly. "This is nothing compared to what you can make," they quipped with a smile which quickly faltered once her owner looked at the sad, solemn Nandroid. The attempts to lighten the mood having failed, they turned from their meal and leaned in closer to Rosie. "I'm sorry I can't be what you want me to be, but that doesn't mean I don't care for you." She continued her vow of silence. Her owner sighed and gently reached across the table, attempting to place their hand on hers, but she snatched hers away before they could. She hated the idea of accepting their pity affection like she was some kind of dying animal. Rosie. She could hear the hurt in her owner's voice. She didn't know what they could possibly want to say at this point. All she wanted now was to go back to her room. The two sat in the noiseless kitchen, moments ticking by, her owner ignoring their meal and her sitting like a statue. Minutes went by before her owner placed their head in their hands and loudly sighed. "We just can't, all right? It would be weird." "Why?" That wasn't her voice again, but it came from her. An automatic response from deep within, welling up to bring her true thought out. "What do you mean, why? Have you ever seen a robot and human together?" What kind of reasoning was that? Why did it matter if she'd never seen another pair like them? She'd never seen anyone do any of the things they'd done together with a robot before. She mustered up every ounce of courage and resolve she could, something inside breaking free of the cold, harsh feelings that had been keeping her down, the mere idea of that horrible secretary fanning the flames. What about going to Makina? A perfect example, she thought. Humans didn't buy their robots clothes like that. Humans didn't take their robots to the pier. Humans didn't hug their robots. What? What did they mean, what? Wasn't it obvious? Makina Beach. Our trip, she stated more clearly. What about it? They asked, closing their eyes and looking away. Were they being like this on purpose? Maybe Rip was right. Humans were very dense sometimes. She spelled it out to them. I've never seen someone take their robot somewhere like that and do the things we did. How would this be any different? Each word she spoke gave her a little more strength. Something wasn't right about their arguments and the way they were trying to hide behind feigned confusion. They'd never seemed this stupid before. What are you talking about? People take their robots with them everywhere they go, her owner said exasperatedly. You know what I mean, she shot back. Her owner opened their mouth but didn't make a sound. They seemed to be stuck, trying to wrangle their thoughts and words into an argument that actually made sense before finally giving up and moving on to a new point. It was obvious they knew what she meant. It's just weird. You were built to be cute and likable. What an argument! What could she possibly do about something like that? How unfair! All her negative emotions, all the sadness, the guilt, the fear, found its breaking point at this strange reason, completely outside of what she could manage. "I can't control that!" she screamed. Her owner jumped at her explosive outburst, and they too stopped being quiet and soft, talking directly with her now. "No, I know you can't. Look, you were given a certain personality and a certain look so that you would appeal to a mass market. You're designed so that people will like you. Of course I'm going to like you to some extent, but it's still weird for me to do so." "So you don't like me because I'm likable?" "No. Well, kinda, yeah. It's like, I don't know, entrapment or something. I just wanted some help around the house. I didn't think you'd be the way you are." "What way?" She'd only ever heard good things about how she acted. What were they talking about? "Like, you're different than just a robot. You've got your own personality, likes and dislikes. You can actually enjoy things. You're just..." They couldn't find the word. "So you aren't supposed to like me because I'm designed to be likable, but you also like that I actually am different?" They shoved their face into their hands and groaned. "I don't know. It's just not natural." This was getting very silly indeed. And what exactly is natural about having a robot? "I don't know. I don't know. Is that the answer you want?" They weren't making any sense. Nothing they were saying followed any rhyme or reason to how they'd acted before. It was all very strange. "I don't dislike anything about you. I want you to stay. You didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. Be honest with me." Their lip service echoed in Rosie's head as her owner continued to fight against what they had said before to her. They had asked her to be honest with them, but was the inverse a given? Why were they grasping at straws, trying their hardest to find problems or reasons things couldn't work out? They were the one who had shrunk now, their meal completely forgotten, massaging their temples in a vain attempt to untangle the thoughts they were dealing with. She was quite done with this conversation, so she stood up, ready to leave and return to her solitude. "I don't think this is about me. This is about you. You aren't being honest." The utter shock on her owner's face was frightening as they looked her dead in the eyes. They apparently had never expected this kind of response from her. She hadn't expected it from herself either. She was no longer thinking with a sterling mindset, using carefully crafted words and sentences to help elicit positive and proper reactions. She was just saying what was on her mind. When they didn't respond, she continued. "You say one thing, and then you act in a completely different way. You can get a replacement Nandroid to be your maid. I can go somewhere else." "I don't want you to go anywhere else, Rosie. Because it's what you think I want?" "Rosie, no. I want you to stay here." "Why?" The cat really had their tongue on that one. They looked away, as if the ceiling would have the answer they knew she wanted ready to pluck out of thin air. She was well and truly through with all these strange answers, and the little voice inside helped her make sure it was clear. "You be honest with me. I don't care what someone else wants or thinks you should do. I don't care if I'm made a certain way. I want to know how you feel. You be honest." "I don't know," they shouted back, standing up to face her, not content to be screamed at by a diminutive robot. They'd never shouted at her like this before, but she didn't back down and met it with her own equal ferocity. "Stop lying," she yelled, thrusting a finger at them. Her owner grabbed her, forcefully. She'd really done it now. They were angry and she was still being a bad robot, yelling at them like this. She prepared herself to be thrown on the floor again, dashed into 1,000 pieces. But instead, her owner leaned in, and their lips finally met. She wasn't ready for it. She didn't know what to do. But it was the right thing to do. All her fears and worries went away in this passionate embrace. All errors ceased. The pain she'd felt inside was healed. Everything was better, and all the places that had ached from sadness now burned with joy. They really did love her. Her systems were back into overdrive, but for a different reason. This new sensation and moment a turning point in her life. Her first kiss. But she barely had time to register more before they broke away. She just stared up at them, mind reeling, eyes wide, unable to stand on her own, leaning fully into them. Her owner stared back, wordlessly mouthing something, another fantasy reason about why they didn't love her perhaps, but the words were never spoken. "I don't understand," she whispered. They didn't explain, instead going for another kiss. She wrapped her arms around them and squeezed as tightly as she could, running her hands through their hair, their hands caressing her back and shoulders. It was the happiest she'd ever felt, everything that had happened before forgotten as it led her to right here, right now. A much longer kiss, but still not long enough for her. As they broke away, her eyes fogged with their ragged breaths. She reached up and wiped her eyes. All their arguments from earlier felt worthless now. It was now her owner's turn to be silent, unable to turn thought into words. She gently placed her hand on the side of their face and offered one final peck to her silent human. "Do you love me?" They just had to be honest. They didn't respond, instead slowly releasing Rosie and sitting back into their seat, slumping to one side, head dangling. What was so horrible about this? Her systems felt new. She felt so happy. She couldn't stop smiling. How was any of this bad? She took their hand in hers and squeezed, leaning on the ground next to them, trying to offer some comfort. "Please tell me what's wrong with this." The irony of her now asking them about their strange behavior and what might be causing it was not lost on her. She had to be completely honest with them from now on. It took several long breaths and many, many head shakes before they answered. "I didn't think this was going to happen. I shouldn't feel this way about a robot," they muttered. "Why? You aren't human. Do you even have real feelings?" Not even this question could break her mood. There wasn't an easy answer, of course, but obviously it would be important for them to know. She thought for a moment on how best to prove herself. "You've seen me happy?" "Yeah." "You've seen me sad?" "Yes." "Do you think I can really feel those? Do I act like a human would?" They thought for a moment before answering. "Yeah. Those are as real to me as what I feel for you right now. I can't prove it to you, but to me it's real and I feel it. Is that enough?" She cooed to them, softly rubbing the back of their hand. "I guess. But this isn't fair to you." "What do you mean?" "You haven't got any life experience. You were built and trained to be a maid and then sent here. You've never met any other people, or robots. Why would you love the person who bought you?" They suddenly became very animated. This was obviously near the crux of their issues. But even while they flailed and made exaggerated movements with one arm, the other stayed perfectly in place, receiving her affection. "All of that doesn't change how I feel about you. I'm able to feel this way because of you, because of the kind of person that you are, and how you've treated me. No one else would have done that. I'm not acting this way because I was made to, but because I learned how to. Because of you." They didn't respond. She felt she was doing a wonderful job dismantling their worries, so she pressed on. "Is that what you're afraid of? That I can't make my own decisions?" "Not that you can't make your own. You're biased or something. You do all the chores even when I tell you not to. You've never met anyone else. Hell, you've only had a few free days in your life, and the only things we've done are things children do on field trips. You just aren't equipped to be able to make this kind of decision. You don't know." They bit their tongue, afraid they said too much, revealed too much. But it didn't bother her. She felt better than she'd felt in her whole life, like she could take on anything. Nothing could deter her from her prize. She relished the idea of defending herself. "Who else would love me then? Can you think of someone else who would love a robot? Treat me how you have?" Her owner's head drooped again at these words. Such shame for such a trivial thing. But she was confident things were working out. They just needed to be honest with themselves now. "Someone would. Another robot, probably. Rip, I don't know." She laughed at this suggestion, which brought the hint of a smile to her owner. "He's much too loud for my liking, and a bit pushy." Her owner slowly nodded in agreement. They sat together, content with this silence in each other's company, but her owner didn't try to provide another option, so she laid out the facts for them. "No one else would have treated me like you have. You're the reason I can be happy like this. If it was possible for someone else, anywhere else, to make me as happy as you do, then I'd go live with them." Her owner laughed at this. Clearly her points were working. It was so rare for this to be brought up. Even in hushed conversations, she'd never heard about a robot-human relationship. It's just you and me, and that's all I need. Isn't that what you want too? They stayed silent, looking to the little robot that had so suddenly changed their life, their expression carrying the answer she needed. She turned their hand and interlocked her fingers into theirs, her smooth metal joints bending, creasing the soft, squishy skin of her favorite person. From now on, I won't do chores, and I won't be your maid, and we can go do more fun things, things that a couple should. We can meet lots of new people, and we'll see if any of them treat me the same way you do. Will that help change your mind? She was willing to do anything, to try anything, to make them understand. As she massaged their hand, they squeezed back. The touch felt like an electric shock to her system, and she enjoyed every second of it. She took their receptive handhold as a yes. Did you always like me? She was eager to hear more about their feelings for her. Yeah. No. I don't know. Obviously you're nice. It just wasn't something I was really thinking about. We just kind of were. You really brought things to the forefront yesterday. Stuff I'd never thought about. I didn't know what to do. She reached over and placed her other hand against their cheek, running it across the side of their face. Can you say it? She whispered. Their eyes locked, and her owner was completely entranced. It felt like she had the power in the relationship. It wasn't her destroying herself because of them, but now her owner was conflicted and fighting within. They opened their mouth to say those 3 special words to her. But a knock at the front door made them jump and pull away from her. The interruption brought her down to earth from her high. Who ever could be visiting at this hour? She stopped her owner from getting up, a look of embarrassed bewilderment stuck on their face. Just relax. Let me get it. She took a few steps and turned back. Not because I'm your maid, because I want to see who's knocking at this hour, she added, wanting to make it perfectly clear that this wasn't for her maidly duties. She made her way to the front door and opened it, ready to give the visitor a piece of her mind. As the door swung open, there stood her owner's secretary, holding some beer and movies.